Well, this week's episode of Unanchored Boston is brought to you by Our Best Foods, featuring our best hamburgers available at your favorite local grocer. And Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping. And it's up in where? We're in New Hampshire, of course. And the great George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. Speaking of greats, we've got a great guest with us today. None other than the great Mike Reiss. Bob, take it away.
Well, this was such a great story. I mean, Mike primarily, as you know, is now covering the Patriots and is the star reporter in the Belichick press conferences after every game. But I was at a restaurant in Framingham, in Natick, and I ran into Mike's dad, Roy. This is how it started. It must have been 20 years ago. Might have been, Mike, right?
Yeah.
But I remember like it was yesterday, and Roy was on Channel 7, and you and I, Mike Lynch, were doing our thing, and Roy, I ran into him first. I kind of ran into him in the restaurant, and we started talking, and he started talking about his son, Mike, about how he's getting into the business and working for the Globe, or I'm not sure what it was at the time. I think it was covering the Patriots, and so then we had him on Sports Final, cold, and he did a hell of a job, and it was just, all great things for him from there on out. So he's a star now, and that's just started with one conversation with his father 20 years ago. Not forever. That he would have made it anyway. I'm just saying it's kind of nice to have been involved.
Yeah, I'm forever indebted to you, Bob, for that.
Why do you think I brought this up, Mike? Just so you could say that.
Exactly. Oh,
well, come on.
And
come on.
I'm still in there, Bob, right? Like I'm still doing it.
Oh yeah, you're still doing it. You're a prime guest now. You're like the guest of choice. You moved into the Bob Ryan category.
And let me tell you, Bob, about Lynchy, that we'll bring this full circle. So you mentioned Framingham Natick, seeing my dad at dinner. So I grew up in Framingham, and we would have a banquet every year for Babe Ruth baseball. And they would bring in a guest speaker. And it was big one year because Mike Lynch at Channel 5 was coming in. And everyone knew him because we would always tune in Friday nights to see the high five and, because he would celebrate the local sports, right? Like the high school sports that and he came in, and Bob, I'm going to tell you to this day, and I'm going to Lynch you tell me if I got it right. He gave us this motivational message. He told us there are three types of people in the world today. He said there are people who make things happen. There are people who watch things happen, and there are people who wonder what happened. He said, go make yourself in that first category and make it happen. I never forgot it. Did I get it right, Lynchy?
You got it right, Mike. You nailed it, like you always do. It was
awesome. A little slower so I could write those down.
That's
great.
And of course, you mentioned Roy Reiss, the great Roy Reiss, Rocky Roy Reiss, we call him. He was on Channel 7. He was a great role model to me when I was breaking into the business. Couldn't have been nicer, and the tradition continues in the Reiss family.
Well, now that we've done praising you and your family, and you way out of proportion, but no, you continue to be the destination of choice when it comes to Patriot coverage, and you're more in the Will McDonough category of opinions matter when it comes to what you say. But this has always been a crazy franchise. So many things over the years. Whether it's Fairbanks, whether it's Michael Jackson, whether it's Billy, whether it's Chucky, whether it's Parcells, whether it's a snowplow, you go right down the line. There's always been wacky things going on. And with the personalities that are currently swirling around there, even the one that's not here anymore continues to have his influence here. Brady, I'm talking about. And then Belichick and Kraft. I mean, this is a nut house down there.
I don't know, Bob. I don't know if I call it a nut house. I sort of boil it down to this. 2020, they had made it, Brady and Belichick had made it 20 years together at that point. And I think Kraft had hoped that they would take it the distance. But at that point, he couldn't get the two of them together to come to that point to say, let's go to the finish line. And you sort of had to make a choice at that point. Like, do you go with the player in Brady, who might only be playing another 3 years as it turned out, or the coach who has probably a longer time frame? And so I look at it this way. He went with the coach, right or wrong. And now he's going to see that, in my view, to the finish line. He's got 329 career wins. Don Shula's got 347.
I know that you're a proponent of him staying till he catches Shula. I know I've heard you talk about that on the air.
Yeah, that's the way I view it. And unless it falls off the table, which I don't think it will, but.
Let me ask you this, Mike. When I was hanging around the bowels of Gillette Stadium doing Patriots All Access, I watched a lot of stuff, and you absorb a lot of stuff. And the consensus was, not just my thought, but some other people were doing the same thing I was doing, was that Bill Belichick was 2 7-9 seasons away from Robert Kraft cutting the cord. And, we're sort of at that point right now. Do you have any trepidation, any gut feeling that he would actually dismiss Bill Belichick before he gets to the promised land of Don Shula?
I think it's unlikely, Lynchy, but you can never say never. What does the 7-9 season look like? And I guess I say it from this standpoint. Like 1993, when Parcells first came in, they were, I want to say, 5-11 in his first season. But the way they ended the season that year, if I recall, you could tell they were on the upswing, right?
Yeah.
So what does the 7-9 look like? Is it sort of middling, and it doesn't look like they're making any progress? Or was it they were in every game?
Well, let me ask you, if you take a look at the schedule and a look at the number one quarterbacks that they're going to be facing home and away, what does a 7-9 season look like for next year? Because if you take a look just at the quarterbacks they're going to face home and away, there's nobody left that you regret facing. There's just nobody that you're not going to face.
It's a tough one, Lobie. That's a tough schedule, and I hate to bring in the odds makers, right? But they've set the over/under at 7.5, which is right what Lynchy said, 7-9. That's where Las Vegas thinks the level is for the team. I guess part of the reason I'm a little optimistic is I think we saw the value of the offensive coaching last year, and I do think it'll be much better. So I think we're judging based on the last thing we saw, which is totally understandable. I sort of say, well, what about 2021 when they won 10 games and Mac Jones looked like he was going the right way? I think they'll get him back going the right way. That's my view of it.
I still find it incomprehensible that they would have brought in those two guys that had that great of an impact. I mean, even today, as you make that argument, I said, no, it's not. These guys, once again, are going up that offensive coordinator tree argument. And I keep thinking to myself, there can't be anything to that. There can't be that much to that. But under every argument, every reason for their perceived failure last year, that comes up as the reason behind it. Maybe, and I'm saying, well, that's just too simple. That you hire two guys that are in for two very important positions that don't know what they're doing, basically, in that job. That seems inconceivable. That individual, Belichick, would make that mistake, or at that level that he would make that mistake. That's, to me, I just could never get my hands and heads around it. But the more you guys talk about it, and the more I hear it from experts like you and Lynch, that was a huge factor. Yeah, that was the real reason. I guess I got to buy into it, but I still have a tough time getting around to it. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And Lynchy, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but if it wasn't Bill Belichick, the head coach who made those decisions might not be the head coach the next season. And if, his track record, Lobie, like of success, probably gives him a little more leeway there, right? And then
I don't think it was only up until the last couple of years when the Belichick-Brady argument was even close to being settled.
Yeah. And he's never been afraid to be the outlier. Like, that's part of, like, he's made unconventional decisions in the past that we've all scratched our head at and said, what is he thinking? And they've worked out. Troy Brown at defensive back. Julian Edelman, defensive back. Brady over Bledsoe, you could almost say, right? I mean, I don't know if you'd put it in that category. So it's a really interesting one. And I'll share one thing that I heard is that when you have one side of the ball, like the offense last year that was so far behind, it has a trickle-down effect on the rest of the team that I was told there was one day in practice where, like, the defense, they couldn't do what they were trying to implement because they were making it so hard on the offense that they sort of had to convene and say, like, how are we going to do this? Like, should we scale back what we're trying to do on defense to help our offense just get...
Will you please run the plays we want you to run? Right. Here's a play offense. Call it.
I agree, Mike. And there's nothing worse and more discouraging as a defensive player when you get off the field and you unbuckle your helmet and take it off and you turn around and go, oh, it's 3rd and 9. I got to put my helmet back on and get out onto the field. Didn't have that problem with Brady because Brady could control the ball, control the clock for a long time. The defense could rest a little bit. They could talk about situations that just came up in the last series. That didn't happen this year. And it's been a long, and I don't, it's never been the case with Belichick. He always had a Charlie Weiss, a Bill O'Brien, a Josh McDaniels, always had somebody offensive-minded guy.
Dante Scarnecchia, he's had coaches.
A creative. With Dante Scarnecchia came here, he was I think he was a wide receivers coach under Ron Meyer, I think when he first came here. But I think this is with Bill O'Brien here now. This is a crossroads year for the quarterback. No question about it. You agree, Mike?
I think it's really well said, Lynchy. And simple as this. Watch Mac Jones in 2021. He looked like one type of player. Watch him in 2022. He looked completely different. Which one is he? We'll find out this year. And they better hope he's the 2021. And if he is, I think the arrow's pointing up. They have a lot of good players. I'm not as doom and gloom on them as some others.
Why is that?
Because I think they have a lot of good players, Lynchy, and I still believe in Bill Belichick. To me, like, the whole idea of, is his job on the line? Like, I don't want to say be careful what you wish for, but, like, I still think he's one of the best coaches in the league. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, defensively last year, I really sort of liked where they were headed at the end of the year. Like, they were not far from getting the Bengals, and Joe Burrow played good defense against them. I thought the way they played Josh Allen and the Bills on defense in the last game was trending in the right direction. So to me, I sort of piece that together and say if they can keep that going and get that offense back up to an acceptable level and tighten up the special teams, which were below their standard, which I don't think is that hard to do. I see it headed back up.
I was thinking about the Thanksgiving night game against Minnesota, I think it was. And I watched the first series and I said, I bet you Matt Patricia missed the bus. I said, why don't they let this kid loose like this every single game? Why am I waiting till Thanksgiving night to let him loose? And he was going up the field, vertically up the field. And he was, I've said this a number of times on this show, that it's pretty frustrating for Mac Jones when he knows more about the offense and he has a better idea about how to get the ball into the end zone than his coach, meaning the offensive coordinator. And I think, and then unfortunately, he let his body language, demonstrate a lot of those thoughts as well.
Why do I keep hearing that the head coach isn't so enamored with Mac Jones either.
Well, Bob, it's a good question. And you might think I'm too easy on this, Bob, but and Lynchy's right. Like Mac Jones has accountability for this too. Could he have handled some of that better? Absolutely. And you might think I'm too easy on this, but I look at it like he was 24 or, young kid placed in a tough spot. I don't know who could have handled that great. So I give him a little rope there, but Bill Belichick, I understand why he might be like, well, I'm not going to just roll out the red carpet here. He's got to sort of prove it back to me that with better structure and support around him, that he's going to get that piece of him together. And we're not going to see that same on-field emotion and loss of composure, penalties after the whistle. So I do think Mac has a little bit to prove to Bill. And I think that's fine. I actually think that could actually be a healthy thing. I don't know if you buy that, Bob, but that's sort of the way I feel.
I'd buy anything. Actually, that's how desperate I am.
Put him on edge a little bit.
I start with Belichick the way you guys deal with him in press conferences, or the way he deals with you in press conferences. Reiss, you know how I feel about that. And I've texted you before. That's, letting this guy off the hook, and why can you? It seems so easy. If I was there, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to watch him pull that act off, in front of, when I say kids, I mean guys that are doing their job. Just because they're younger and not as smart as he is, doesn't give him the license to act the way he does. That's all I'm saying. And I know a guy like you that comes into the room with more football knowledge than most of the other people, not as an affront to them. I'm just saying, you've done your homework. You've done, you've built yourself up to where you really are very conversant in all these things. But you had to go in there every week and ask him who his starting quarterback was going to be next week. It became almost a joke. And to him, he was just, you gave him a field to play on, basically what you did. He was, I'm just saying, and I'll drop it. He doesn't do the press any favors by acting that way.
Well, and so I want to tell you how I look at it is, look, we're all imperfect, Bob. I've gone in there and asked stupid questions before, right? So I can't sit here in judgment of anyone.
I know, but stupid. Who says they're stupid? He does.
Bob, but I would take the media out of it. To me, it's what Bill Belichick always says. The media is a conduit between the team and the fans. So really, it's not what Bill Belichick is acting towards the people asking the questions. I look at it like I'm there on behalf of the fans. So I want to ask the questions that the fans who are investing their time, money, passion, that they want to know. And so I don't see it as any personal affront on me as a media member. I'm in the middle. I look at it as like I'm representing the fans following the team.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And there's nothing worse than sitting there and you've got some station will send a news person down because they think this person is not a soft sports person. This person's going to crack the hoodie. He's going to get the answers that we've all been waiting for. And when the question comes, I just go, oh my God, no, please, no, no. and then the reporter gets the death stare and then gets, the answer that we could script out if we had 30 seconds ahead of every time. We could just script it right out. It's so incredible to watch, isn't it?
Yes. And Lynchy, that's when we try to come in and recenter the discussion.
Yes.
And maybe toss out a question on special teams.
Yeah.
He knows he's seen the script. It's the same every week, recenter the line of questioning. Very good. Lynchy, this is quite a thrill for me to be in the presence of two of the Patriot Hall of Fame electors, you and Mike. And just before you got on, Mike was telling me, he's part of the Hall of Fame selection committee and how fond I am of how that whole process works. And they've named three more. And I know, Lynch, I don't know if you were involved in this or not, but Who are the three?
So I want to get your thoughts on this. So we're in the room and we nominate a lot of people.
Right.
And then we discuss and everyone votes. And you take the big total. We had 11 this year that we discussed. And we voted, and we'll find out on April 13th who the three that got the most votes were.
Let's see. Parcells, so it'll be one.
Yeah. So can I go alphabetical order?
Sorry, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I love it. Julius Adams.
Yep.
Pete Brock. And Pete Brock was as much for what he's done post-career, like as an alumni coordinator.
Yep.
He just retired. Chuck Fairbanks.
Yep.
Russ Francis. Logan Mankins. Lawyer Malloy. Bill Parcells. John Smith. Mosi Tatupu. Mike Vrabel. And Wes Welker. So that's who everyone's in the room. You can nominate anyone. Those were the 11 that were nominated. And then everyone had their, you talk about them, and then you write down who you feel the most passionate about. First place, 5 points. Second place, 3 points. Third place, 1 point.
You going to tell us who you voted for?
Of course. How could I come on here and not do that?
I think it's great.
Well, and I believe in transparency. So my philosophy is there's no right or wrong answers, only because a team Hall of Fame can mean different things to different people. I have Bill Parcells number 1. That's my vote of conscience, because for me personally,
you'll find no argument there.
But Bob, there's a great argument against him. And it's that, what he did at the end of his tenure, the way he left the team, like some people feel like that should rule him out. And I can't sit here in judgment of those people that say, like, that's how they feel. But I am more lenient on that, because to me, that's when I became all in on the Patriots. When he got here,
changed the culture for a lot of people.
For me, that's like, so he was my number 1. My number 2 was Mike Vrabel, who's been a 6-time finalist, and I feel really strongly about him. And I really struggled at my number 3. And for this year, it was Wes Welker. But I really could have put down any of them there. I was having a tough time. What would you guys have done?
Well, you got it'd be tough to put 2 coaches down there, but Fairbanks did in the 70s almost what Parcells did in the 90s. I mean, this was a dead franchise, and he came in and he drafted well. They ran the ball. Still, it's an NFL record, I think. It's still a record for yards rushing in a season. Anyway, Ernie Adams would know the answer to that.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I would go the same way. I would go Parcells, Vrabel, and maybe Fairbanks or Welker. I'd probably split right there. I don't think Fairbanks is ever going to get in. He might get in with the Veterans Committee. Is it time for veterans this year?
So not this year, Lynchy, and so I think it'll be next year on the veterans, or he's the type of candidate that Robert Kraft can put in as a contributor, as with his executive power, which he's done in the past for Billy Sullivan. His feeling is like there's no team if not for Billy Sullivan.
Right.
Did it for Gil Santos.
Yeah.
And did it for Tracy Sormonti, the longtime late cheerleading director. Yeah. And he did it this year for Dante Scarnecchia. So that's another way down the road that Chuck Fairbanks.
We don't know how many people he's kept out. We know how many people he's put in.
Well, there is. I haven't. Because I had the stroke. I'm out of state, and so I've been unable to attend. But there is a cartel. And you worked with a lot of these guys, Mike, that feel very anti-Bill Parcells. For many of the reasons that you already stated there, how it ended, his overall record in those 4 years. But I'll tell you, as Parcells says, you could have archery practice in the stands before he got there, and not hit anybody. And when he got there were fannies in the seats, and I remember that. Remember that first day? We all remember that little portable ticket office they had in the parking lot with the line all the way down the hill on Route 1, and hadn't seen that since a Rolling Stones concert. That many people interest, and it turned the franchise around. And how can a guy be in the NFL Hall of Fame, not be in a team Hall of Fame? But then you could say he's in the Giants Hall of Fame, so that takes care of his coaching days.
Yep. Bob,
I
what
would
would
throw
you?
Pete Brock in there. That's who I would have picked, only because I liked him. I had a relationship with him, and
Yep.
not only that, I thought he was a great player, and he was instrumental in that whole strike. He was a big part of that. But then again, I would, of course, put Parcells in there with you guys. And I don't know, Fairbanks, obviously, for that reason. Vrabel for all kinds of, if you can pick only three, I'd take the two coaches and Peter Brock.
That's great. I love it. And I love the discussion.
Yeah.
Because I honestly don't think that I don't feel like there's right or wrong answers.
Right.
The team, like, there was some great discussion this year about Mosi Tutupu. And like how the Moses Moose's section and what he meant as a special teams player, and how Steve Tasker of the Buffalo Bills, who's considered one of the NFL's best special teams players ever, said that it was people like Mosi that he modeled his game after. So like stories and discussions like this, I love it.
Yeah.
Like, so you can't be right or wrong. You can't be wrong, in my opinion. It's what it means to you, what you feel,
Well, who do you think's going, now that you told, so you voted for, who do you really think's going to get in?
Awesome. So
Vrabel.
I think Vrabel's been a 6-time finalist, so I think he'll be a finalist again. I think Logan Mankins had I sensed a lot of support for him. And the tough thing for me with him, and so I think he'd be my second, and I think Welker will be the third because they're the most recent. And I think that's where the challenge in this comes. Like, you want to make sure you're being fair to the Fairbanks, Parcells, Julius Adams, Pete Brocks, Mosi Tutupus, and how do we balance it out? And Lynchy, like you mentioned, the seniors committee that they have, that's how that can be something for the players in that discussion. So that would be my guess, but maybe there's a surprise. I mean, Parcells has been a 4-time finalist. I know there is a strong block of support for him. That's sort of, then there's the strong block of negative Parcells thoughts. So where does that balance out? Does it get him on the,
Well, Mike, I mean, realistically, doesn't it just take one negative anti-Purcell guy? It depends on who's the negative. I mean, there's no way in hell Kraft would let Parcells into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no, I don't think so, Bob. I think if we voted, so we had, I think, 24 people in the room. If of the 24 people, if Parcells has been a finalist 4 times, and then it goes to the fan vote to choose the one. I mean, if the fans keep clicking Parcells, I mean, I think he would be the choice. I don't think Kraft would stop it. And honestly, Bob, I wouldn't be shocked if in 2 years, 4 years, Kraft puts him in. Don't.
I think you're right. I get that. I can see that. Robert does things juxtaposition of what he did in the past. Yeah. Once he has a chance to live with it and find out the so-called consequences.
Hey, Kate, keep this discussion going while I throw out some hamburger news here. Next time you're in a grocery store and you're shopping, don't forget to go into the frozen food section and look for a bag of meatballs. And now we're starting to look at boxes of hamburgers. We're moving from meatballs to hamburgers right now.
We're ready to roll.
No meatballs on this show, folks. Look for the smiling chef. Where is he, Bob?
You're in this corner right here.
Right over. This is like the Three Stooges trying to do a commercial. Right. Look for the smiling chef in the bag, and you'll find great tasting meatballs and hamburgers for your next dinner or hot snack. Remember, our best meatballs and our best hamburgers. The meatballs come in a resealable bag. The hamburgers come in a box that Bob is holding right there, and they make it easy for you to store away before your next meal. And don't forget to download the money-saving coupon available online at Our Best Foods.
Can't go wrong here. Can't go wrong.
You know what we call a smiling chef there, Mike?
What do we?
No. You got to do this story again.
We call him Pablo Bell. Now, there's a story behind this.
Oh God,
The
Mike,
Red
tell
Sox
the
used to
story
train
again. We tell the
in
story every week.
Winter Haven. So we all used to go to Winter Haven and check in, myself, producer, truck operator, cameraman, at least 4. Lobel had about 12 people. I had to give out 4.
Right. Poor Mike.
So everybody in Lobel and Channel 4's team has a room reservation under their name, except for Bob Lobel. So he's asking, at noontime, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3. Now he said, I got to do a live show at 6 o'clock. I got to get in my room and shower and change and everything else. Bob, pick up the story from there.
Well, they kept looking and they found someone named Pablo Bell that was registered. Turned out it was the same registry address from Boston.
Pablo Bell.
They gave me his room and Pablo never showed up.
That's great.
So it just keeps marching on. All right, what other problems haven't we solved with the Patriots? And maybe we should talk about. You're not just a one-trick pony. The Celtics are going to start the playoffs here pretty soon.
Yeah. So, I was thinking. It's so funny you just said that, Bob, because I was thinking about coaching and what we've talked about, and that's been my question all year for the Celtics. Like, how much when they get to the playoffs will the inexperience of their head coach in those situations be a factor? Might be a factor, might not be. That's what I'm curious to see. But I love the season they've had. I love the excitement it brings the region. It makes me think, I just love being on with you guys. Like literally, as we're talking, I have like flashbacks in my head of being in my driveway as a kid, shooting baskets, pretending I'm Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge. I could give you the lineup of those 80s and then turning on the sportscasts. And I literally can see both of you on the garden parquet.
Well, you didn't tell your dad you were watching us and not him, did you?
Well, he unfortunately had been let go for Zipra Zeppa at that point.
My God.
Yeah, was cracking eggs on his head, right?
Jeez.
Is that who's Zeppa replaced? He replaced Roy, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
wow, Roy,
so
we are sorry. Roy, we are sorry. We would have brought you over. Oh my God.
Wow.
And then same thing with the Bruins guys, right? Like those, I think about that.
Who do you think's got a better chance of winning it all in their respective sport?
I'd probably lean toward the Bruins. And why is it that I'm nervous that they've had this amazing regular season and that I know that it doesn't mean anything when they get to the playoffs, right? Because it's a blank slate for everyone. I'm nervous that they can sustain it because I maybe have thoughts of like the Patriots of 2007 in my mind. And do you think that's a fair analogy? Because I remember the Patriots were so exhausted, Lynchy, at the end of that year that they were like puttering to the finish line. I don't know if it's the same thing, but why am I thinking like that? I should think more positively.
Too much energy spent on breaking 62 wins, getting 60 goals for Pasternak. It's almost like the year that Chris Sale had to get 300 strikeouts.
Well, how can you stop? Here's the thing. I don't disagree with you. How do you stop that? How do you slow that train down? How do you put the brakes on? How do you not do what you accuse them of doing?
I know.
Look at UConn basketball. I mean, they came alive in early March. They weren't even considered a team to win the Big East, and they started playing great ball like that. I think back before you were born, Mike, to Ken Dryden in 1971. Yeah. I mean, all you need is one goalie to stand on his head for 4 games or 7 games, and this could happen because there's a reset. As Dan Shaughnessy said a couple of weeks ago on the show, he said the regular season ends and then there's a reset. Yeah. And so many times 8 beats a 1 for some reason. I have the same feelings you have, Mike. I am scared to death of this first round.
I know. It makes me nervous. And to be honest, to circle back to the Patriots, it's why I'm actually, as we've transitioned away from last season, why I'm sort of getting a little bit more excited about what's ahead, because I feel like the expectations are lower.
Yes.
Lynchy, right? And in those seasons when they're lower, sometimes when they overachieve, it can be almost a rewarding journey.
Yeah.
So it's just so interesting.
So what's wrong with the Celtics? Why don't you pick the Bruins over the Celtics?
So I think the coaching is the one thing, Lobie,
Okay.
and I know the Bruins have. I mean, he's been a coach before Montgomery. It's his first year, but maybe just because I feel like the Bruins have been a little more
Consistent.
Like the Celtics will throw a game in there where they get like beaten by Washington, where you're like, what's happened? Like where did that come from? It just shakes my confidence in them a little bit. But I'm speaking legitimately as a fan because I can't say I'm as locked in on watching them as closely as I do like the Patriots.
What about you, Michael?
If I had to pick a team to win, it would be the Bruins. I think I think that the East is really tough for the Celtics to get out of. Philadelphia and in Milwaukee are both in there. They have to play one of them, and I think the Bruins they could be a Secretariat. They could be wire to wire. They could be one of those teams that goes wire to wire. But too many crazy things happen, and the playoffs it really literally is a second season. Tampa Bay is still a very formidable foe, and then when you get out west, I mean, Edmonton's a pretty good foe. So, I'm concerned about it.
I liked Harry Sinden. He was on with Shaughnessy did a column with Sinden, and he said the three things that a team needs in the playoffs. Well, one of the three was refereeing. There's no difference in the NFL either, or in the NBA. I mean, these sports are the most difficult to officiate. It's impossible to officiate these sports.
Yeah.
Any three of those. Baseball's a little different, but even baseball's not that easy.
And just so Dan knows that we're all reading his column, he said the refereeing was number 3. Yep. What Lynchy said, a goalie standing on his head was one of them.
Yes.
And I believe the third of the 3
boards.
Yes.
Wasn't that it? Play check or keep it to the boards.
Yep.
Check it.
I think, that's right. And it might have been something with the power play, if I remember, in there too.
But Harry was the best. I mean, that team has had so many characters, so many personalities.
Yep. Some of my memories when we were talking about my dad was early 80s. You remember the Gilles Jobert, the goalie, Reggie Lemelin.
Yeah.
Bork was in there, and I would go in with my dad when he was still working, and we would be in the old garden, and I think I was in the dressing room, with the players. I got a goalie stick that Gilles Jobert gave me, and those teams, I remember names like, I want to say like Nevin Marquardt.
Definitely.
And I could just like list off the names. And I remember being in the press room, and they used to have a soda machine, and they had this orange drink. It wasn't like carbonated. It was like a combination of like fruit punch, like high C, but like soda. And I would just have the orange drink, and we would be in at the garden. And those were the days. And that's probably a lot of ways how I got my passion for what we're talking about, the sports.
Yeah. A lot of people forget that, you were at the Globe, you're at the Metro West for a long time. Then we were the Patriots for a little while. And now you have an NFL beat, but everyone thinks that, Mike Reiss was just born with a Patriots helmet on. No, he's experienced and written about it all. And this is such a great time of the year. We got the Celtics starting, we got the Bruins starting, the Red Sox are starting up. We got the marathon. The only thing we're missing is Marvin Hagler fighting Thomas Hearns or Sugar Ray Leonard or somebody like that.
The old boxing and the Revolution are part of it. Which is great. And I don't know if you all felt the same way. Like, I just love doing it here because people care, right? In Boston, sports matter.
Right.
So I've always loved that. I love that part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine, doing, I grew up here like you did. And I can't imagine going to Houston and just going, I got to care today about the Houston Texans. What am I going to do? Let me ask you this. Has your job gotten easier or harder since Brady left?
Easier or harder since Brady left? Lynchy, easier. And I want to tell you in this sense, I just give you my first answer. Like, the seasons are shorter. So like when Brady was here, you're going till there was one year, I'll tell you, like, they went to the Super Bowl in early February. Was a long year. And I remember getting home, and at that point, I had been married for several years. We had our first child. And I remember turning to my wife and saying 2 weeks later, like, I'm going to the combine in Indianapolis. And she just started being like, what? You're leaving? Like, the season just ended. Right. And it was such a quick turnaround because your seasons would go so long. So since Brady left, if I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but I think every season has ended like January 4th, January 8th, January 7th, whatever it was. So usually you were working hard, like, not that you're not working, but like when your team's still in it, that's a grind all the way to the Super Bowl. So it's like we were talking about Patriots Hall of Fame, like Mike Vrabel, he played like 17 playoff games for the Patriots in his time here. That's like another whole season.
That's a touchdown in every one of them almost.
Right? So I think in that sense, Lynchy, easier because the seasons have been more condensed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Let me ask you guys this question. We talk about sports and what it means here where we live. Why? I have a theory, but the question is why?
Yeah.
Why not in Kansas City? Why not in Houston?
Yeah.
Why not in Salt Lake City? Why not?
So I'm going to give you my theory, but I actually would.
No, I want to hear your theory.
I'd like to hear what you think,
Go
because
ahead.
I feel like you have a little more wisdom than me on this. But I think it's the
No,
tradition.
that's really nice.
Don't count on it, Mike.
Really, you're really going down the wrong road on that one, buddy.
All right. So I used to go visit my grandfather, and we would just sit and talk, and he would tell me stories about the Red Sox. And I mean, he's no longer with us, but I remember those like they were yesterday. And so that was passed down from him to my dad to me. I'm passing it down to my kids. And I think like Lynchy mentioned, the Texans, like being a fan in Houston, that team was born in the year 2002.
Yeah.
Right. So we have tradition. It's been passed down from generation to generation. So that's one of my thoughts as to why.
Good thought. No, I think that's A+.
Yeah, I think it is too. I think because, I don't want to say Houston and Atlanta are transient cities, but they're not like many cities in the Northeast, like Philadelphia, New York, Boston, where there are generations that can talk about the Yankees and the Rangers, and the New York Giants, New York Football Giants, and we had so much frustration, except for the Celtics and a couple of Bruins Stanley Cups, that people say to me, what do you remember? Any game you remember more than any in your career? And I said, this may sound crazy, and nobody would have picked this, but the AFC Championship game in 1986, January of 1986. They said, really? Why? I said, well, I was born here. I went to the very first Patriots game when I was 7 years old, and I didn't quite know that they were yet because the Giants were a football team. But I never thought that I would live to see a day when the Patriots would make the Super Bowl. And when even though they got as Steve Nelson calls it, the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, we were up 3-0, and the Bears came all the way back and won 46-10. I think the final was. But for me, that was I just stood there and said, I can't believe the Patriots. I remember Jack Edwards was standing next to me. He goes, Lynchy, snap out of it. I said, I can't believe the Patriots going to the effing Super Bowl. And
Jack told you to snap out of it?
Yeah. I was just standing there like staring into space saying, I can't believe this is actually happening.
Don't get me started. But now listen, since I'm not the one born, I'm the one not born here. Okay, so I have to speak from a different place.
Cleveland.
Well, I can't rely on I was born there, therefore I know more. Jack Craig used to write. Jack Craig always. I got along with Jack Gray. I love Jack, and I miss him, believe it or not. Even though he was a tough critic for the Boston Globe.
He was good. He was fair. I didn't.
He was very fair. And you know what? And he'd call you and whatever. But his big deal was, how could you possibly understand and talk about Boston sports unless you were born here and brought up here? He always had that bent to him, and I always would just argue with him. And just, Jack, it's just not the way it is. You might think it is, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody from the outside, this is a destination market.
Yeah.
Atlanta is not a destination market.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia is a destination market. Chicago is a destination market. You get there, you stay there, and lucky to be there, as a matter of fact. But I think that what Mike said about the generational, 3 or 4 generations that grew up here is one huge factor why the Bruins and the Celtics have such a passionate fan base, as well as the Red Sox, believe it or not. But I also think there's this neighborhood thing about Boston. It's the one thing that has brought all the neighborhoods together, other than Whitey Bulger. It's the one thing that's brought all the neighborhoods together as one, and in many diverse neighborhoods. I mean, like reservations. Every neighborhood's almost walled off. That's how distinct the neighborhoods are here. And it's taken me a while to realize that, but I just think sports is a way of bringing all that diversity together.
Hey, Bob, you know what? I bet you got from Cleveland to Boston here in an RV. That's what
I hitchhiked, but I got a ride in an RV.
Well, camping season.
Breaking Bad.
Camping season is just right around the corner. If you're thinking about a new motorhome or a pop-up camper, go visit our friends at Cold Springs RV in Ware, New Hampshire. Where, Bob?
Where? It's right near. It's just west of Manchester.
Ware, New Hampshire. At Cold Springs RV, you'll find a huge selection of the latest and new and pre-owned campers for you to choose from. If you want to check out the great deals today, simply go to coldspringsrv.com. That's coldspringsrv.com.
We're having a nice contest, go camping with Mike and Bob and whatever guests they want to bring. But
John Madden had the Madden Cruiser. We're getting a Lobie Cruiser. Okay,
Great.
And so one of our first discussions was we're going to take the Lobie Cruiser cross country.
Oh,
Who would you rather ride cross country with?
That's Reiss.
Belichick or Parcells?
Oh my. So am I working, or is this for enjoyment?
No, you're not working. You're just listening. You're just driving and listening to, one of those guys is riding shotgun.
So I think I'll take Parcells for a couple reasons. Number one, I want to make sure that I'm getting out of the RV alive by the end of the trip. And I'm not sure some of the looks I get from Coach Belichick.
Right. Why would you want to spend that kind of time with him?
So I might take the Parcells for that reason, but also he's a great storyteller, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I think Bill Belichick is too, but we just don't see that side of him. So I could flip, but I would go with Parcells.
Unless it's a Friday, you might want to take Belichick, right?
Yes. Oh man, when we started, and Bob, you were talking about how some of the way Bill Belichick answers questions, and it doesn't always sit well with you. I will tell you, like early on in the 2000 from 2005, that range, we used to have like Trivia Fridays. He would come in with trivia questions and he'd ask us, and it was more of a, but you know what changed, guys? I think, and I'm part of it, the social media.
Yeah.
And the way, like now there's not, those moments aren't as private anymore, and so I think with that, I can see where he's maybe not as comfortable doing stuff like that. Yeah.
No, I think he is. Yeah, I think everybody is. He's got to be careful. You can't say what you want to say. And, it's too antiseptic, I think. Antiseptic is probably a good word for it.
Yeah.
I just thought he would have been above that. I just would have assumed that he could have controlled that in a better way and not totally buttoned up the way he has. That to me is difficult. I can see guys having a separate side to them that we don't normally see, but I can't think it would be that different. I mean, that distinctly different from what we see in those press conferences to having a real personality. I just don't get it. Like I said, Bill, you're better than that. That's what that to me was. I always thought that he was better than that. And I really felt badly for him more than anything else that, you're better than that, Bill. You're smarter than that. But it's almost like he's doing stand-up comedy. I think it's almost that's his comedy hour.
I think he's how do I phrase this the right way? Socially challenged, maybe a little bit. Is that a good word, Mike? Is that
maybe just not as comfortable, right?
Yeah.
In those settings.
Yeah.
But so there was an interesting just sort of snippet of this last year. He loves Chris Berman of ESPN. And usually when Bill Belichick walks in the room, it's the same every day.
Yeah.
This one day, Chris Berman was there. And Bill Belichick saw him. And it was like, I want to say, I don't want to over exaggerate it, but it was like his shoulders, just relaxed. He started clapping. He smiled. And it was like a quick glimpse into, the transformation that we're talking about. And then he goes, Boomer, why don't you take the first question? And it was like, whoa. Yeah. And so that's what leads me to believe.
Yeah, no, right. I get it. There have been moments like that when who seemed incredibly normal, for lack of but anyway, so much.
In all fairness, I don't know how long I did the show with him, but let's say 10 years. And, before that light went on, we would have some fascinating, he'd come in and, I don't want to betray any confidence, but he'd come in and say, where'd you go on spring break? And I said, I don't know, Revere Beach, probably, He said, my daughter and all her girlfriends are going to Costa Rica. Costa Rica, can you believe they're going to Costa Rica? Who goes to Costa Rica? And he's just talking about that. He said, oh my God. Then I come in one day and my knuckles are all scratched or something. What happened to you? I said, my daughter moved into a 3-decker in South Boston, no elevator. I'm lifting everything. He goes, did your parents ever help you move in any place? I said, no. I said, did your parents help you move into college? I said, I got a quarter. I was told to go to the Wonderland Tea Stop and change at Park Street and go to Harvard Square. He goes, I took a bus from Annapolis to Hartford when I was going Phillips Andover, and I had to hitchhike from Hartford. And then the red light would go on. He says, well, they have a very good team, and all 3 phases of the game, offense, defense, special teams. And it's too bad that conversation couldn't have continued like that, Yeah. And we've all seen them like that. And that's why Fridays, for some reason, it's sort of like the hay is in the barn, or the hay used to be in the barn when his great teams were here, and everything is now just brush up work for the next 2 days to the game on Sunday.
Well, if I asked you to be Bob Kraft, Mike, and Mike to be Belichick, what would that conversation be like? Which part of your personalities would you deal with each other? How would you deal with each other?
So am I Kraft here, Lobie?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the first thing we would say is let's talk about how last year unfolded with this offensive. Is that like role play? Like with the whole offensive coaching, and what are your thoughts heading into this year? Like, I'd want to know, what were you thinking? What did you learn? And where are we going? And I think those are fair questions for a boss to ask in based on what we saw.
Would he ask
I have to be Belichick?
Yeah.
Mind your own business, Robert. You told me that I could run the team the way I saw fit, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. Period.
It's getting a little uncomfortable, Lobie.
Oh, I can see that. Right. How long can this relationship last?
It's I love the analogy that Robert Kraft has said in the past, whether it was with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, whether you could apply it to himself and Bill Belichick. It's like a marriage, right? Like, it's not always straight line. There's ups and downs, and you sort of ride it together. And I can see where that's not always the easiest dynamic. Like, that would be a tough one for me to respond to what Lynchy just said.
What was your reaction, Mike, when you heard that Robert said we were going to begin our search for an offensive coordinator immediately? I mean, Lobel and I almost fell over when we read that.
I was shocked. I mean, we were sitting at dinner, and I saw like my phone buzzed, and I saw it. I said, "What is this?" Like, my honest thought, Lynchy, was, "Is it like a fake account?"
Yeah,
because I got it on the Twitter, and I was like, and so that's my first thought was, this is so out of the norm for them. Like, let me make sure it's real.
Yeah.
That was my first reaction, to be honest with you. And then once I realized it was real, I thought it was, to me, speaking to the fans to say, look, we know what happened last year wasn't an appealing product, and we're making a change. That was.
Did you see it at all as like Robert taking back a little bit of power away from Belichick?
So that's interesting. I didn't, because it's my belief, and I don't know this for sure. I think Bill was going to do it, anyway, because someone told me that I trust that said Bill knew that he had to do something, that he couldn't come back in 2023 with the same setup.
Yeah,
I've sort of heard conflicting things on that, to be honest with you, but the person that I trust the most told me that this was going to happen, whether that statement came out or not. And so I viewed it from a standpoint of, the statement was definitely not Bill Belichick type, because he doesn't do that. It was more speaking to the fans to let them know we hear you and we're going to do something about it. So it did, you know what I mean? That was my thought of it. Not necessarily about taking control as much as just two different voices was my thought.
Let me ask you this, as we'll close it out after this. But I want to get in the Red Sox, and I know this is painful. But what do you know about this team? What can you tell me about this team? I mean, and where are they going?
Yeah.
And why?
So I don't know if you guys are the same. I love just having the game on.
Yeah.
And I'll be around the house, and I just love that it's on the TV. There's something soothing about baseball. This doesn't feel like a championship team to me. I don't think that's like a news flash. I just hope they're competitive and keep it interesting, because I just love having the game on, right? And so, I mean, that's a pretty low bar, Lobie, that I'm setting for my personal experience.
That's a bar. Most people don't have the bar, so I think that's.
Yeah, I don't think they're going too far. I look at it and I'm like, I look for glimmers of hope and promise for like building something greater for years ahead. And I actually, the team building part fascinates me, how you have these stars and they're not around anymore. Like, and I'm curious, like, why that's happening.
Yeah,
that's my view of it.
Yeah, I agree. And you remember there was always, you go back to Tony Canigliaro, you go to Carlton Fisk, you go to Nomar, you go to Yaz, you go to Reiss, you go to Lynn, you go to Mo Vaughn, there was always, so-and-so's coming up next inning. I got to make sure that, I'm in front of the set. I want to sit down and watch this at bat. It's been a few years since there's been one of those people on the team, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard two different things. Like, they won one of their early season games in the opening series on a walk-off. And it seemed like there was good electricity in Fenway.
Yeah.
And that night.
The guy dropped the ball in left field, and that
he did.
Take him an extra out.
He did. But we got to take it when we can get it, Lobie.
No, I agree with what you're saying. That was the.
Yeah. But so I loved seeing that electricity. But then, and maybe it's because it's early season, midweek game, I turn on the Pirates series. And one of those games, I mean, I didn't see many people in the seats.
Yeah.
That caught my eye as a fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. I think empty seats they're painted red and they stand out when you're empty. Empty seats show up.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're thinking about a new vehicle, tell you what, folks, go where we go. Lobie and I have been going.
Lynchy, I'm serious. It's like He's like Mr. like Flex Seal. He's like the guy that delivers the Gorilla Glue. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. You're doing
Well,
it.
you're thinking about a new vehicle. You'll get the Lobie Cruiser, so I'm going to think about maybe a Toyota Camry or a RAV4 or something like that. But go where Lobie and I go, and a lot of people go too. See our good friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We have been customers for years because we know George Gray will treat you right. They're a family-owned and operated dealership that we trust, and you can trust as well. So go over to Lexington, see the great George Gray at Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. You will not be disappointed. My family probably owns half a dozen currently cars from George Gray. So there you have it.
What about the draft, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have 11 picks, and that's a lot. They're second behind a couple teams that have 12. They pick 14th overall, 46th in the second round. And I look at the Patriots and I say, what can get them back up to where Buffalo, Kansas City, Cincinnati are right now? To me, those are the three elite teams in the AFC. And I think they need what I would call blue chip players. Like they got to get at 14 or trade up a little bit. Like got to get a guy that is a blue chip player. And whether that's a cornerback, offensive tackle, tight end, like it doesn't matter the position, Lobie. That's my thought. You got to start building that talent base back up with those high level players.
You know, we never Mac Jones. We probably as the first round was unfolding, I think it was pretty obvious they're going to take Mac Jones. But other than that, I don't think it's been very easy to predict who they're going to take in the first round.
Lynchy, I've never got one right. You know, Mac was one I felt you're right. That was probably the closest I got. I just didn't think he was going to be there because that was the year everyone was saying the 49ers were going to take him third overall going into that draft. So it's been hard. I try to look at what Belichick generally values in his first round picks, like elite traits. And I try to look at who's coming out and like, I'll just throw a couple names out, like, and then we can circle back after the draft in a couple weeks. There's this tight end from Georgia, Darnell Washington. He's 6'7", 267 pounds. So in the words of Bill Parcells, he looks great coming off the bus, like, right. Yeah. And blocker, pass catcher, like only has 45 catches. So production isn't there, but like, I look at, from Belichick's perspective, I can see him salivating over just like the physicality of the player. So someone like that, or a longer cornerback, because I got some shorter cornerbacks like Christian Gonzalez of Oregon, Devon Witherspoon of Illinois. Those are a few names that I'm throwing out there, and we'll see if we get them right.
What would Will McDonough do with the draft these days?
Oh,
huh?
I mean, the stories that you hear, I don't know, it would be fascinating, Lynchy, how he would do the social media. Do you think he'd be on Twitter? I don't think he would be. Do you?
No. I don't think so. But he was, his wife told a funny story. I think it was at his funeral about that some music was playing, and she said, "Oh, let me go to another channel, get something you recognize." He goes, "No, I know that. That's Eminem. Let it play." So, he was in touch. He had his finger on the pulse. Eminem. I wouldn't have come up with that.
Can I tell you a quick Will McDonough story?
Absolutely.
I had looked up to him. His Saturday column, where he would in the Globe, where he would like go around the league and talk to people and like talk about the matchups in the AFC title games or divisional round. I always thought it was just the best stuff. So I had reached out to him when I was working at Patriots Football Weekly, and I said, I'm interested in hopefully one day following your path and working for the Globe. And he goes, "Well, let me know what I can do to help." And I said, "Well, I'm going to apply for a job in Chattanooga, Tennessee." at a newspaper. I would love it if you could make a call on my behalf to let them know like I'm a worthy candidate, to talk to. No problem, kid. I'll take care of it. So they fly me down for the interview, and I'm on the small plane going into Chattanooga, and the sports editor picks me up at the airport. And I extend my hand. I say, nice to meet you. I'm Mike Reiss. He goes, nice to meet you, Mike. How do you know Will McDonough? And when can you start?
Really? Yeah,
That was him.
The legend.
Yep.
Mike, you did a great job. Thank you for being with us today.
I appreciate you guys so much. And
No,
you know what? Before you wrap it, Bob, like we were talking about why the Boston sports, why it matters in Boston. Like, honestly, like you're going to kill me for saying this, Bob, but I think it's because of people like both of you. Bob,
No,
you made it
encourage
fun.
you to say more, actually.
Bob, you made it fun. It should be fun, right?
Fun,
like sometimes we forget that.
Yeah, well, fun. Fun is not a bad word.
And Lynchy, you celebrated us, like coming up. You made it feel important, right? Like that we want to be part of it. Lynchy's profiling, the high five. I believe it was Friday night. Was I right?
Yeah. They changed it eventually to Thursday, but Friday for a long time. Yeah.
I'll never forget it, And so I think people like you, it got time on the 6 o'clock newscasts, right? Like, so all that stuff. So anyway, I appreciate you guys more than you know.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Keep up the great work. And son of the great Rocky Roy Reiss, by the way. Son of the great. And all right, so that's our show for this week. I don't even know how we wrap it up. Let's just say goodbye. All right,
you did fine, Mike. Thanks a lot.
All right, bye, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
job. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Good job, Michael.